You have tried. You have strained. You have whispered your desires into the silence of the night and wondered why the world does not bend. You have read, affirmed, and visualized with clenched fists behind your eyes, but nothing seems to shift. And now perhaps you stand in that invisible ache where effort has become its own kind of resistance. But what if the very trying is the veil? What if the urgency to make something happen is the hand that closes the door? There is a hush more powerful than striving, a stillness that does not fight, does not chase, does not beg the soil to bloom. This is the great reversal of truth, that when you stop trying, what you long for appears, not as a gift from outside, but as the memory of who you have always been. The law does not respond to effort. It responds to assumption, not the sweat of willpower, but the quiet acceptance of being. And so you begin to feel it subtly, gently, that your striving was born from forgetting. Forgetting that imagination is the first cause, that consciousness is the only substance, that all things already are. You were never meant to force reality into obedience. You were meant to rest in its reflection, to see within the mirror of the mind the end already fulfilled. The great secret is not how to make it happen, but how to remember it has. And you cannot remember while you are grasping. You cannot hear the whisper when you are shouting your prayers into the wind. Desire is not fulfilled through effort, but through surrender. Not the passive surrender of the defeated, but the divine surrender of the awakened, who knows that creation is finished and walks in the echo of its completion. It is here that the law of assumption speaks in silence. It does not say, try harder. It says, be still and know that I am God. You assume the wish fulfilled, not by pushing against the facts, but by feeling the truth of your being deeper than facts can reach. You turn inward, not outward. You feel the state as real, and in that sacred inner act, the world begins to bend, not because you forced it, but because you remembered it. This is the sacred paradox. The more you try to manifest, the more you delay the manifestation. For to try is to declare it is not here. To try is to place your desire in a distant land, separate from the I am. But when you rest, when you let the desire be done, when you walk as though the prayer has already echoed back with an I meant, everything shifts. Feel this now, not as concept, but as breath. You are not reaching, you are remembering. You are not attracting, you are awakening to what was always yours. The seed does not labor to become the tree. The sun does not effort to shine. All nature obeys without striving. And you, as the image of the Creator, create by the same principle, not through force, but through faith, not through effort, but through embodiment. Imagine now, if you truly knew it was done, how would you walk? How would you rise from bed, open the door, speak your name? That is the secret doorway, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the dwelling in the end, not to get, but to be, not to hope, but to know. This is why Scripture says, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Not after you have begged long enough, not once you've earned it, but in the moment of assumption itself. The receiving is folded inside the believing, and yet the mind still wrestles, does it not? The conditioned self says, but I must do something. It fears stillness, it calls rest laziness and faith foolishness. But here is the invitation, let go of the grip, soften the hands of the soul, release the urgency, and in its place, discover the deeper current, the one that has always carried you without effort, the current of knowing. Feel the peace beneath the noise. There is a rhythm that moves without pushing, a divine intelligence that does not need your strain. The caterpillar does not effort to grow wings, it yields to transformation by design. So too, the new version of you emerges not through will, but through surrender to the imaginal act. And as that truth settles in, something strange and wonderful begins to occur. You feel lighter, not because something changed outside, but because something loosened within. The grip of desperation relaxes, the mind opens, the soul remembers, and you begin to see that your effort was never necessary. It was the only thing in the way. But there's a reason so few live in this effortless power, because most are taught to worship the doing, not the being. They are raised to believe that success is earned by sweat, that love must be hunted, that peace is a distant prize, given only to those who prove their worth. And so they run, endlessly, toward mirages they've already imagined, not realizing the race itself delays the arrival. For to chase is to confess the absence. To strive is to shout, it is not yet mine. But the law is merciful, and it does not mock the seeker. It waits patiently beneath the noise of all your trying. It whispers in dreams and quiet hours, in the hush between thoughts. It speaks not in thunder, but in stillness. You have already received. This is why few ever touch the sacred ease, because effort flatters the ego. It feels noble to struggle. It feels responsible to worry. It feels reductive to rehearse your fears beneath the name of planning. But in the kingdom of consciousness, such labor is fruitless. Imagination does not respond to pressure. It responds to faith. And faith is not frantic. Faith is not loud. Faith is still, because it knows. You do not manifest by earning. You manifest by assuming. An assumption is not a task you perform, but a state you inhabit. It is not the labor of a moment, but the identity of your being. When you assume the end, you are no longer waiting for the thing to come. You are walking in its shadow, living in its echo, resting in its substance. And what you rest in, you reflect. There is no outer cause. You are not reacting to the world is reacting to your inner dwelling. This is why the wise do not panic when the facts oppose their desire. They remember the mirror is delayed. They know that the outer is always slow to catch up to the inner, so they do not rush, they do not grab, they persist in the assumption, and the world reshapes itself in their image. Can you feel the shift that occurs when you stop asking how, and begin knowing it is done? The body softens, the breath deepens, the mind no longer spirals in timelines. You are no longer waiting, you are no longer pleading, you are already there, not in time, but in consciousness. And because consciousness is the only reality, nothing else is needed. Do not be fooled by appearances. The facts are shadows, they are echoes of former states. What you see around you now is not proof of what is, but residue of what was. You are not beholden to it. You do not need to convince it. You only need to choose a new state, and rest in its inner certainty, long enough for the shadows to rearrange themselves around the new light. There is no timeline in truth. You are not trying to bring the desire closer. You are dissolving the illusion of separation, and that separation is upheld by effort. Every time you try to make it happen, you reaffirm that it has not. But when you live as though it is already so, the need to try disappears. You become what you have claimed. You walk in the rhythm of the answered prayer. This is not imagination as fantasy. This is imagination as substance. The unseen is not less real. It is the cause of the seen. You do not imagine to pretend. You imagine to remember. You are not creating something from nothing. You are aligning with what already exists in the unseen realm, the kingdom prepared from the foundation of the world. And so you rest, not out of laziness, but out of divine remembrance. You walk in silence, not because you are uncertain, but because the stillness is charged with knowing. You no longer beg. You no longer perform. You simply be. And in your being, all things are drawn unto you. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, not whose hands are busy, not whose thoughts are calculating, but whose attention rests in the state of the fulfilled end. That is the holy posture. That is the sacred receiving. Notice now what softens in you. The fear that once clung to your chest begins to loosen. The urgency fades like mist in morning light. You realize that nothing is missing, except the recognition that nothing is missing. And from this space, the law begins to work, not through effort, but through reflection. The world mirrors back the state you no longer struggle to hold, but naturally embody. Which brings us to the mystery few dare to ask. If trying only delays the manifestation, what then awakens it into form? It is not striving that brings it forth, but selection. The moment you choose your state, and remain faithful to it, reality yields, not as an act of reward, but of reflection. You are not convincing a distant power, you are unveiling your own. The moment of awakening is not when the thing appears, but when you stop reaching for it, and rest in the knowing that it already is. Imagination is not a means of escape, it is the birthplace of all that you call real. To dwell within its silence, is to stand before the Holy of Holies, the inner altar where God speaks in feeling, not in words, and what you accept there becomes flesh, not because you made it happen, but because you ceased pretending it wasn't already true. The mystery then is not how to awaken your desire into form, but how to remain in the state of its fulfillment, without contradiction. This is where most falter, not in imagining once, but in remaining loyal to the vision, when the senses betray it. For the outer world will echo back your past assumptions, until your new one is fully impressed. And if you allow the mirror to shake your knowing, you return to effort, and effort returns you to delay. So you practice stillness, not to get, but to remember. You do not wait for a sign. The sign comes from the state, not before it. You become the thing desired in feeling, and all things that match it unfold without force. You are not following the path, you are the path. The road rises to meet the one who walks from the end. The one who knows it is done, feels no need to explain, no compulsion to prove, no hunger to push. They are anchored in the unseen reality so deeply that facts lose their persuasion. They speak not to convince the world, but because they are full of the vision, the knowing, the sacred claim that I am has already become. Here lies the forgotten power of reverie. When you enter the imaginal act with relaxed conviction, when you play the scene that implies your desire is fulfilled, not to make it so, but because it is so, you are no longer separate. You have stepped into identity, and identity does not seek its proof, it expresses. You must feel the truth of your wish not as a visitor, but as a resident, not as an outsider peeking through the veil, but as the one who belongs. You dwell in the state of being it now, and in that dwelling, something divine stirs, not just in the outer world, but in you. You begin to embody a new rhythm, a new posture, a new tone of thought. You no longer wake up hoping, you wake up remembering that your nature is not effort, but ease. Your nature is not lack, but fullness. Your nature is not seeking but being. You are not here to get what you want, you are here to be it. To inhabit the feeling so deeply that the outer has no choice but to conform. The world is clay, but the hands that shape it are invisible. They do not live in the fingers, they live in the inner image, the wordless state assumed as fact. And it is here that you meet the secret place of the Most High, not in temples made with hands, but in the silence behind your eyes. Thy Father which seeth in secret, shall reward thee openly, not for your pleading, but for your resting in the unseen reality long enough to call it real. And yet this resting is not passive, it is alive, it is electric with faith. It is charged with the quiet knowing that everything begins and ends within. When the desire is assumed, not analyzed, embodied, not examined, then time becomes irrelevant, for you are no longer waiting on it, you are walking from it. Can you feel now the gravity of being, not the lightness of fantasy, but the weight of sacred conviction, the truth that hums beneath your ribs when you declare I am, with no apology, no hesitation? This is not performance, this is presence. And when you live from that place, not trying, not forcing but being, you do not chase, you are found. You do not labor, you unfold, and the world begins to echo back the stillness you've become. But this leads to an even deeper remembrance, hidden beneath the assumption itself, the mystery of how identity is not just a choice, it is creation. And as you let that truth breathe within you, that identity is creation, you begin to see why effort was never the source of change. For what you claim as I am is not a label you wear, but the root from which your entire world unfolds. To assume a state is not to decorate the surface of your life, but to carve its foundation in the unseen. And from that unseen place, all things take shape. You are not changing your world by rearranging its outer forms. You are changing it by choosing the one who lives it. This is the divine mystery hidden in plain sight. When you assume a new identity, the world cannot help but respond. It must, because it is not separate. The world and you are one, an extension of the self imagined. The mistake is believing identity is something inherited, something proven by the past, or granted by the world. But it is none of these. It is chosen, silently, again and again by where you dwell in consciousness. If you wake each day believing you are still the one who lacks, who waits, who strives, you will find a world shaped perfectly to confirm it, not out of cruelty, but law. For what you accept as true of yourself must be reflected. And so when you shift, not by effort, but by inner allegiance, you do not just attract new experiences, you become the one for whom those experiences are natural. This is not about pretending to be someone else. It is the sacred return to your original design. To say I am wealthy, I am loved, I am whole, is not to wish for what is not, but to unveil what always was beneath the layers of forgetting. There is no higher work than this silent choosing, no greater creation than the assumption made real by feeling. And the moment you no longer try to become, but instead declare, I am, you stand as the Creator remembering itself.
This is the end of effort, not because you gave up, but because you rose above the need for effort. Let the feeling sink in. You are already the one you desire to be, and the only bridge between here and there is knowing that there is no bridge. It is already so. The shift is not one of time, but of recognition. The new identity does not arrive, it is claimed, and in the claiming, everything changes, not all at once perhaps, but inevitably, irrevocably, faithfully. You begin to see how natural the transformation is, not through strain, but through alignment, not through tactics, but through trust. The version of you who no longer tries so hard is not lazy. They are free. They are the one who walks in peace, who dwells in the feeling of certainty, who no longer argues with the mirror, but simply changes the face behind it. And even now, you can feel it, the soft unfolding, the way your body responds to truth, not with tension, but with relief. You do not need to struggle to convince yourself. You only need to feel what it means to be. Rest in the posture of already. Let it anchor in your breath, in your tone, in your subtle thoughts that drift without command. This is not about controlling the mind with force. It is about saturating the mind with the new identity, until the old one fades like a dream upon waking. When the new state feels familiar, when it becomes your default tone, your inner climate, you will notice the world moving, not because you pushed, but because you surrendered the mask of separation. You stopped trying to get what you already are. And this is why, though the world teaches effort, the Spirit teaches rest. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Not the rest of idleness, but the rest of realization. The moment you see clearly that your inner world is the cause, the outer world loses its grip. You no longer wrestle with shadows. You rise in light. Notice the silence between thoughts. Feel the spaciousness where your trying used to live. That space is not emptiness, it is fullness waiting to be claimed, and you claim it not by doing more, but by remembering who you are. But this leads you to a deeper, more subtle truth, one few recognize. If your identity creates your world, who were you before the striving began? Before the striving, there was only stillness, a pure awareness, unconditioned, untouched by time. You existed not as the seeker, but as the source. No name, no effort, just being. And in that being, all things were held in potential, unspoken yet already whole. That is the beginning you never truly left. That is the truth that effort hides. For effort begins the moment you believe you are separate from what you desire. It arises the instant you forget your nature, and assume the role of the one who must earn, chase, persuade. But beneath every story of lack lies the memory of your original self, the I am before form, the one who simply knows. This is why silence heals more than action, because in silence the false self dissolves, the anxious voice grows quiet, the spinning mind loses momentum, and in that gentle stillness, a deeper identity begins to rise, not the one shaped by history, but the one who was never born and cannot strive. The true self does not try, it remembers. When you say, I want, you affirm the gap. But when you say, I am, and feel its weight, calm, resolute, unquestioned, you collapse the distance. The desire no longer floats on the horizon, it rests inside your being, and from that center, everything begins to change, not because you pushed, but because you aligned. Can you feel the difference? The energy of trying is restless, it seeks signs, it waits with tension, but the energy of being is soft, certain, quietly magnetic. It does not ask if it's working, it knows it is done, and in that knowing, manifestation becomes natural, not miraculous. This is the sacred order, first the assumption, then the reflection, not the other way around. And so the work is never in the outer scene, but always in the unseen identity. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. The heart, your inner knowing, your felt truth, is the seed. The world is only the harvest, and when that seed is no longer contaminated by doubt, when it is not interrupted by frantic effort, it grows without strain. Just as a tree does not worry how tall it will become, your manifestations unfold when you trust the root more than the branches. So you release the question, what must I do, and replace it with who must I be? And the answer is always the same. Be the one for whom the desire is already real, not in the mind alone, but in tone, in presence, in feeling. Be the one who has received, not someday, but now. Walk in that memory, until it becomes your atmosphere. This is not about pretending, it is about returning returning. The one who needs nothing manifests everything. The one who rests in being emits the signal the world cannot ignore. You have seen this. The person who feels secure in love draws love. The one who lives in abundance, before it's seen, watches the world echo it in form. They are not better. They are not luckier. They are not luckier. They are simply aligned. And alignment is not the result of effort, but of still, sacred choice. You are not here to battle reality. You are here to remember it is your mirror, and the mirror does not change when you plead. It changes when you shift. Notice now how your breathing deepens as you stop trying to figure it out. There is no formula to apply. There is no ritual to perfect. There is only one eternal act, the assumption of the fulfilled state. And once that state is made real in feeling, the law begins to move, not by effort, but by obedience to your inner world. Even the delay you perceive is not a punishment, but a question. Will you remain loyal to the unseen, or will you return to striving? The moment you choose again the state of already, the delay dissolves. Time bows to assumption. Reality has no choice but to follow. And yet, there is something even deeper unfolding now. A truth more radical than stillness. It is not just that effort delays manifestation. It is that what you desire is not something you attract, but something you are. And now you begin to see it, gently, like the light returning after a long night. You are not here to acquire what you long for. You are here to awaken to what you already contain. The love you seek, the wealth you imagine, the peace you crave. They are not foreign substances to be summoned by force. They are qualities of being, hidden within the I am, waiting not to be chased, but remembered. This is why effort fails. It begins with the belief that you are not yet the thing desired. It is rooted in separation, but you cannot become what you already are. You can only accept it, and that acceptance is not made through action, but through feeling. Through a quiet, unshakable knowing that your desire is not ahead of you, it is within you, wrapped in the language of identity. And so the question softens, from how do I get there, to who am I now? You do not attract abundance. You are abundance remembered. You do not magnetize love. You are the form love takes, when it awakens in flesh. The shift is not outer, it is ontological. You are not a body, reaching for a blessing. You are the blessing discovering itself in time. Feel that now in your breath, in the still rhythm of your presence. When you no longer try to get, and begin to be, you release the delay. You dissolve the striving. You enter the sacred current of truth. All things are states, and the state you occupy is the world you inhabit. This is the holy power of assumption. You assume not to imagine something apart from yourself, but to reveal the self you had forgotten. When you dwell in the feeling of already being, you do not need signs, proofs or outcomes to comfort you. You carry the signature of completion in your being. Let it be simple. The world complicates manifestation with steps, rituals, formulas, but the spirit works in stillness. The law speaks in one voice, according to your faith, be it unto you. And what is faith but fidelity to the unseen, a steadfast resting in what the senses cannot yet verify? You are not the observer of reality, you are its origin. The outer world is a servant to your inner state. You do not need to manipulate the mirror, you only need to change the face you are being, and that face, the one that already is what you once sought, needs no effort to become. It simply is. And yet, the mind will ask, if I already am, why does it not appear? But can you see? The very question arises from the old self, the one who still believes in distance, the one who watches the outer world for confirmation, forgetting that the confirmation comes after the assumption is sustained. It is not enough to visit the new state. You must abide in it, make your home in it, think from it, feel from it, rest within it, until the outer world bends to your inner authority, for it must. Reality is not capricious, it is precise. It reflects the dominant state, not the momentary wish, but the inner residence. This is why trying becomes resistance, for each time you try, you reaffirm the lie that you are separate from what you seek. You declare yourself unworthy by the very nature of your effort. But when you assume the end, not as a tactic, but as truth, you collapse the lie and dwell again in the I am. You must feel it now, not with strain, but with surrender. Let go of needing it to come, and realize it already is. The world you want is not ahead, it is here. veiled only by your insistence that it is not. Remove the veil, and what remains is fulfillment. And as this truth settles deeper into your heart, you begin to move differently. You no longer act to change things. You act as the one for whom they have already changed. You no longer perform for results. You express because of identity, and that identity is the source of all reflection. So let this become your prayer, not words shouted into the silence, but a state assumed in quiet reverence. I am, and therefore it is. I am, and therefore it is. I am, and all things move accordingly. But here, another holy mystery begins to whisper. If the desire is not separate from you, then where did it truly come from?
The desire did not come from the world. It did not rise from comparison nor from lack. It was not born of ego, nor implanted by culture. It is older than all of that. It is a whisper from your deeper self, an echo from the end, calling you home. What you long for most is not a future event. It is a memory surfacing, a truth reawakening in time. Desire, when it is pure, is not a reaching. It is a recognition, a signal from the unseen revealing what already belongs to you in spirit. You do not create it. It calls you, because it is you. The true desire is not separate from the fulfiller. It is the voice of your fulfilled self speaking from the depths of the eternal now. And this is why effort fails. Not because you are weak, but because it assumes you must travel towards something that is already yours. The striving blinds you to the origin of the desire. You believe you must climb toward it. But the moment you understand that desire arises from being, not from doing, everything changes. What you desire you are. The longing for wealth, for love, for peace. It is not a sign of lack. It is proof of possession. You could not truly want what was not already yours in the unseen. You feel the pull of it, because it is already planted in your soul. You do not chase it into existence. You unveil it through identity. This is why the desire feels so sacred, so alive. It is the divine self knocking at the door of your current awareness, asking not to be earned, but to be remembered. It is not a test. It is an invitation. When you stop trying and start listening, you will hear it, not as a hope but as a knowing. It is not effort that brings it into form. It is fidelity, the quiet inner devotion to the truth of being. You are not running toward your desire. You are dissolving everything that says you are not yet it. And what remains, when all resistance falls away, is a being in perfect harmony with the wish fulfilled. So feel it now, not in the mind, but in the breath, in the quiet stillness beneath the words. What you seek is seeking you because it is you, wearing the face of the future only to draw you back to the now. There is nothing to chase, only something to become still enough to receive. When you stop forcing, you begin to hear again. And what you hear is not the voice of effort. It is the voice of alignment, that soft, sacred frequency that tells you, I am the one I've been waiting for. I am the answer I once begged the sky to send. And when you accept this, not as a wish but as fact, the outer world begins its holy rearrangement. You were never meant to toil for what is already yours. The Father does not give by measure. It is your good pleasure to receive the kingdom, not by effort, but by inheritance. And you inherit through identity, through the sacred act of becoming still enough to accept what has always been. This is the deep magic of the law of assumption. You assume not to pretend, but to awaken. You assume not to get, but to be. You assume not to change the world, but to change the self who sees the world. And in that shift the entire landscape of your life transforms. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. You do not need more methods. You need fewer doubts. And doubt is not conquered by argument. It is dissolved by dwelling. The more you dwell in the state of already, the less room there is for effort to live. And now you are beginning to taste the truth behind every true manifestation. It was never about the object. It was always about the self, the one who no longer tries, but knows. But this raises another sacred question, buried beneath the silence. If all desire is the echo of your true self, then what happens when you no longer desire at all? When desire dissolves, what remains is peace, a holy stillness, not the absence of movement, but the presence of completion. You are no longer pulled toward outcomes, because you have become the place they rest. The longing that once reached toward a distant shore softens into quiet recognition. There is nowhere to go. I am already here. This is the great paradox. At the height of fulfilled desire, you no longer desire, not because you've given up, but because you've arrived. And in that arrival, something eternal begins to unfold, not the thing itself, but the one who no longer defines themselves by needing it. The self revealed when all grasping ends. The world teaches you to want more. The spirit leads you to remember enough. In the beginning, desire stirs the soul into motion. It awakens the imagination. It whispers that something more is possible. But once the state is fully assumed, the hunger ceases, not because the desire is denied, but because it is complete. You do not stop desiring out of resignation, but out of realization, the realization that all things are within you, that nothing is missing, that the need to manifest was never about getting, but about uncovering who you truly are. And when that unveiling occurs, the noise of effort falls away like a garment, no longer needed. Feel that now, gently in the quiet spaces of your body. The mind is not racing, the breath flows without instruction. You are not climbing anymore, you are being. This is the temple the world forgets to enter, the inner sanctum, where manifestation is no longer an act, but a natural outflow of being. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you, not as rewards for seeking, but as reflections of alignment. The kingdom is not a location, it is a state where effort ends, and remembrance begins, a state where you need not reach for the fruit, because you are the vine. And here lies the secret the world finds hard to grasp. True power lives in contentment, not the passive contentment of settling, but the active contentment of spiritual fullness. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you are no longer becoming, you are being. When desire fades into identity, the need to manifest fades into expression. You no longer manifest things to complete you. You create from wholeness, from overflow, from divine sufficiency, and what flows from that place carries a beauty no effort could have built. This is why the most profound manifestations come not when you try harder, but when you stop trying entirely, when you rest so deeply in the state of being that the outer world cannot help but rearrange to match it. It has no choice. The mirror must obey the face it reflects. You begin to notice that the desires which once ruled your mind now sit quietly in your heart, already felt, already fulfilled. You do not chase them, you embody them, and from that embodiment, life becomes gentle, natural, joyful. You may still take action, but the action is no longer effort. It is an echo, an inspired movement that arises from peace, not pressure. You are not acting to get something. You are acting because something is already yours, and the outer scene is simply catching up to the inner fact. And when you walk like this, in quiet authority, in restful faith, in gentle assumption, the world bends with grace, not because you wrestled it into place, but because you remembered it was always following you. Let this be your rest. Let this be your prayer. Not the words you say, but the state you hold. Not the effort you apply, but the self you assume. The true you, the eternal you, needs nothing to be whole, and from that wholeness, all things flow. But there is still a deeper current moving underneath all this, a question that stirs softly in the soul. If all things arise from being, then what is the source of being itself? And so the question drifts in, quiet as a breath, yet heavy with truth. If all things rise from being, what then is the source of being itself? The answer is not a concept. It is not a doctrine or creed. It cannot be named without being diminished. It is the unspoken I am behind every formed thing, the awareness in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. Before desire, before form, before identity, there is only consciousness, pure, formless, infinite consciousness, the root of all that appears to be. And this consciousness is not separate from you. It is you, not the you born of name and story, but the silent observer behind it all, the dreamer behind the dream, the light behind the scenes. You are not a mind inside a body. You are the awareness in which both body and mind appear, the one eternal subject, projecting itself as countless objects, yet never divided. This is why the law responds not to effort, but to identity, because identity is the mask of consciousness, and whatever you wear is your inner name. The world reflects. Say, I am poor, and the world bends to show it. Say, I am free, and freedom begins to unfold, not because it was created, but because it was revealed. Your assumption is the signal, your being is the source, and this source needs no effort to express itself.
It is already expressing. Creation is finished. All states exist. You are not here to build reality. You are here to select it. The moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are not calling something forth from distance. You are tuning yourself to the frequency of what already is. Can you feel the relief in that? The soft surrender. You no longer have to force the ocean to produce waves. You only have to align yourself with its movement. And that movement is not forward. It is inward, closer than breath, more intimate than thought. It is the still small voice, whispering, I am. When you touch this truth, all effort falls away. Not because you've given up, but because you've woken up. You see that trying was the dream, the illusion of separation. But in the silence of remembrance, you no longer act from lack. You create from fullness. Let this truth sink into the quiet places of your soul. Your being is the source of all that appears, and your being is consciousness, which means you are never the creation. You are the creator dreaming creation into form. I am the Lord, and beside me there is no other. This is not arrogance, it is revelation. There is no other power, no opposing force, no external God deciding your fate. Only consciousness, choosing its own reflection moment by moment. The law is perfect. It does not judge, it mirrors. And so when you assume the state of already being, already having, already fulfilled, you are not claiming something, you are reclaiming what is eternally real. You are lifting the veil of effort, and stepping back into your original position, the one who knows. And this knowing is not mental, it is not intellectual, it is felt, quietly, like a song beneath the surface, a warmth in the chest, a weightless clarity. You know you are not the one who must climb, you are the mountain itself. You are not the one reaching for the sun, you are the light, refracted through form. And from this awareness, desire is no longer a cry of emptiness. It becomes a play of expression, a movement of delight, a dance of form within the formless. You do not need your desires to make you whole. You allow them to rise and fall like waves from the ocean of being. There is no need to rush, no urgency to get. You are not here to escape your life. You are here to inhabit it fully, as the one who is always choosing not what to do, but what to be. And when you choose to be, effortlessly and silently, the world obeys without resistance. Let your breath carry this truth deeper. There is no outer source. There is no need for struggle. The source is you, consciousness imagining itself into form, and the form will always mirror the frequency of your assumption. But even now, as you feel the depth of this revelation, another sacred invitation begins to arise, not to manifest more, but to enter into the highest state of all, the state beyond even desire, the state of divine union. What waits beyond even desire is not nothingness, but fullness, not absence, but completion, a quiet so rich it silences all seeking. Here, you do not imagine to get, or assume to change. You do not shift into states for manifestation's sake. You rest in the knowing that all states are within you, and none of them define you. You are not the state. You are the awareness in which states arise and dissolve like breath. This is divine union, not with a God above, but with the God within. The sacred realization that what you call I is the only power, the only presence, the only source, not the personality, not the body, but the pure awareness behind it all, beyond all need, beyond all image. And this awareness lacks nothing, seeks nothing, tries for nothing. It simply is. To reach this state, you do not climb, you release. You do not fight your way in, you remember your way back. It is not achieved, it is revealed, and it waits just behind every moment of striving, every breath of desperation. As soon as the grasping ceases, it appears, not because it came, but because you finally stop pushing it away. Here, there are no conditions to fulfill, no affirmations to repeat, no scenes to construct, only presence, only being. The I am before it attaches to this or that. Not I am rich or poor, not I am healthy or unwell, simply, I am, pure, still, untouched. And from this root, all else grows, effortlessly. This is the state beyond the law, not in opposition to it, but as its foundation. The place where manifestation becomes irrelevant, not because it stops, but because it flows so naturally. You no longer name it as such. Life unfolds as reflection, but you no longer chase the reflections. You have become the light that casts them. The old self dissolves here, the one who desired, who worried, who tried. It does not die in pain, it fades in peace. for it was never real, it was a role, a shadow. The truth of you is beyond roles, beyond needs. It is the eternal observer, the eternal giver, the eternal self. And yet, from this high place, when you do imagine, when you do assume, the world obeys with miraculous speed. Why? Because there is no longer contradiction, no more inner conflict. You do not create from fear or doubt. You create from knowing. You are not reaching for the end. You are the end, the final cause, the Alpha and Omega, within. This is not theory. This is law. To reach this state is not reserved for the few. It is the inheritance of all. But few will stop trying long enough to feel it. Few will rest deeply enough to hear the silence speak. For in the silence, the voice of God is not heard as a word, but as identity. I and my Father are one. Not metaphor, not mysticism. Identity. The self you've sought, the power you've prayed to, the future you've feared. It is all here, folded inside your own awareness. You are not a creation. You are creation itself, dreaming through form, and from this dream, all things arise. The world is not outside you, it is within you, expressed in time and space. You are not in the world is in you, and what you assume yourself to be, becomes the container for what appears. So rest here, let the truth settle beyond the mind, beyond even imagination, not as effort, not as practice, but as surrender. You do not need to do, you do not need to fix, you only need to remember, and remembering is a return, not to some distant divinity, but to yourself. This is why all effort falls short. It is the attempt to grasp what can only be accepted, and what is accepted with stillness becomes form without resistance. But even now, in this high state of union, a gentle question begins to rise, one that reintroduces the sacred dance of form. If the highest state is one of being, how then shall you live in the world of doing? The world of doing still unfolds, even when you live from being. But now, the doing is no longer effort, it is expression. It no longer flows from fear, but from fullness. You are not acting to complete yourself. You are revealing the self that is already whole. And in this subtle shift, the burden disappears. You move through the world as a silent flame, not reaching, not grasping, not performing, but simply radiating. Action becomes the overflow of identity, not the proof of it. You are no longer the one trying to make things happen. You are the one in whom things happen with grace, because you have remembered your center, and so you go to work. But the work does not define you. You speak words, but the words are rooted in silence. You engage with the world, but the world no longer dictates your state. You have become the master of consciousness, and therefore, the master of reflection. From this place, you no longer chase signs. You no longer beg the outer world for reassurance. You walk in the assumption that your state is law, and because it is law, you act in alignment with the already. The end is your guide, and each step is a living echo of the thing for. This is the holy paradox. When you need nothing, all things become available. When you are no longer reaching, you receive without resistance. When you stop trying to do, your actions become effortless, magnetic, precise. You move not with anxiety, but with quiet authority. You are like the tree that bears fruit in season, without strain, without rush. It does not check each day to see if the blossom has arrived. It trusts its nature, and its nature fulfills itself. So too with you. The fruit of assumption is inevitable, but it ripens only in rest. This is why the one who dwells in the end walks with patience. They do not panic when the outer world still speaks the language of delay. They know the mirror is catching up. They do not fight with appearances. They continue to be, knowing the reflection must come. Let your actions rise, not from urgency, but from being. You may feel moved to write, to call, to create, to change direction, but none of it comes from a need to fix reality. It comes from the one who knows the end is secure. You are not building the bridge. You are walking the path that already exists within your fulfilled self. And when you live like this, the world begins to flow differently. It stops resisting. It stops delaying. It opens itself to you, because you have opened yourself to it, not through striving, but through surrender. And surrender is not passivity. It is faith embodied. There is no conflict between being and doing. When the doing flows from identity, it is only when you act to compensate for an inner void that effort becomes resistance. But when the void is filled with the knowing I am, every action becomes sacred, every word becomes aligned, every moment becomes holy. and in this holy rhythm, time no longer controls you. You stop measuring how long it's taking. You stop wondering when it will arrive. You are not watching the clock. You are living the result, and the result is inevitable, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. So move gently, speak slowly, act when inspired, not because of fear, but because of fullness. The world will feel this shift. It will respond in kind. For you are not in opposition to it. You are in union with it, and union is the absence of trying. Let your outer life become an extension of the inner one. Let the echo carry your tone, not your tension. Let your doing be the fruit of being, and in this way, even the most ordinary act becomes a vessel for the extraordinary. But as you move this way, as one who no longer tries, but expresses, there emerges yet another sacred unfolding, a deeper layer still veiled in mystery. If all outer action is born of inner identity, then what shapes the identity itself? Identity is not carved by the world. It is not etched by time, nor built through repetition. Identity is shaped by inner agreement, by what you accept as true, silently and repeatedly, within the temple of imagination. It is formed not through experience, but through assumption, and what you assume yourself to be, becomes the law of your life. The world mirrors the self-concept, but the self-concept is chosen, not inherited. You may believe your identity was given by childhood, or history, or failure, or triumph. But beneath all those layers lies the original act, the inner word, I am this. That word is the seed, and every condition, every outer scene, is merely the unfolding of that seed into form. This is the hidden axis on which your entire world turns. What do you believe yourself to be? Not what do you say aloud, but what do you accept without question in the silence? That is the creative center. That is the place where all effort begins or ends. The law does not respond to begging, it responds to being. You cannot consistently manifest beyond the level of your self-concept. For if you assume, I am unworthy, and try to imagine wealth, the tension will break the vision. You cannot sustain what you do not believe yourself to be. And so the inner shift is not about forcing the world to change. It is about becoming the one for whom change is natural. And how do you become? Not through straying, but through selection. You choose again. You dwell again. You assume again. You let the new concept of self grow in the garden of imagination, until it becomes the only truth you carry. And from that truth, all things are added, not by striving, but by reflection. Feel this now, softly. You do not have to deserve the new identity. You only have to accept it. The Father does not require proof. He requires faith. And faith is not something you earn, it is something you return to. A simple holy remembering, I and my Father are one. I am already the thing I seek. Let this remembering shape your self-concept, not the facts of your past, not the opinions of others, but the vision you choose to embody. Identity is a garment worn by consciousness, and you are free to clothe yourself in any assumption, knowing the mirror will follow the fabric. You do not change your life by pushing against the old. You change it by being the new. You inhabit the new identity long enough, deeply enough, quietly enough, until the outer world becomes its echo. This is not a performance, it is a knowing, a deep alignment with the truth of your choosing, and what you choose consistently becomes automatic. The one who once had to affirm now embodies. The one who once had to visualize now simply expects. The state becomes natural, familiar, lived, and in that familiarity, the world softens its resistance. This is why identity is the true manifestation. Everything else is fruit. The wealth, the love, the healing, they are not manifestations of effort. They are manifestations of self. You do not attract them, you express them, and you express them only when you carry the tone of already. If something feels far, it is not because it is far in space or time. It is because it is far from your assumption. Bring it close by becoming the one who already knows. And knowing is not mental, it is felt, it is embodied, it is worn like a second skin, that soon becomes the only one. And yet even here, there is a quieter invitation rising, a mystery hidden beneath every assumption, every identity shift, every manifestation. What remains when even the self-concept dissolves? When the I am this falls away, and only the I am remains.
When even the self-concept falls away, what remains is pure essence, unnamed, unformed, untouched by preference. The naked I am, stripped of its attachments. No longer I am rich, or I am healed, or I am successful, just I am. And in this most sacred state, You are no longer imagining outcomes. You are resting as the source itself, the formless presence that gives rise to all things, yet clings to none. This is not emptiness. It is fullness beyond measure, a richness so complete, it does not need to move, a love so whole, it does not need to prove itself, a power so quiet, it bends the world without effort or sound. Here, there is nothing to manifest, for all is contained, nothing to reach for all has returned. You are no longer the one seeking, you are the light in which seeking appears, the canvas behind all scenes, the awareness before all thoughts. And from this ground of being, the world begins to appear, not as something to conquer, but something to witness, a mirror of the infinite within you. You begin to understand that even the highest self-concepts were still masks, beautiful, radiant, necessary, but still garments draped upon the nameless. Even the role of creator, of master manifester, of awakened soul, must one day fall away, like leaves in autumn. For the tree was never its leaves, it was rooted in silence, long before anything was seen. And so you rest, not in laziness, but in truth. You no longer need to assume a thing into being, for you are now the presence that is being. You are not the wave trying to shape the ocean. You are the ocean remembering it never needed to rise or fall to be whole. Let this stillness wash through you. It is not the end of the journey. It is the place the journey was always returning to. The center, the point before assumption, before desire, before form. And from this place, all things arise freely, without asking, without delay. For there is no longer anything in the way. Here, you become like the quiet fire, burning, but not consumed, illuminating, but not demanding attention. Your very presence begins to shift the world, not through what you say or do, but through what you are. People feel the peace in you, and remember their own. Circumstances shift around you, because they must conform to the frequency of wholeness. There is no longer the need to manifest, and yet manifestations appear more swiftly, not because you are focused on them, but because you are no longer separated from them. The bridge has dissolved, the distance has collapsed. You are not trying to live in the end, you are the end, expressing itself as now. I am that I am, the eternal name, the original identity, not the label applied to the self, but the self before all labels. This is the highest rest, the end of effort, the stillness that vibrates with silent creation. And from this stillness, when you do imagine, when you do play within consciousness, it is no longer a task, it is a song, a dance of light through space. There is no need to get anything, you are simply revealing more of what was already inside, and so the forms may come, or not, the conditions may shift, or stay the same, but you are unmoved, for your peace no longer depends on outcomes, it is anchored in being, and from this anchored being, all things are permitted to rise. Let this be your practice, not effort, but return, not willpower, but presence, not control, but surrender to the awareness that precedes all doing, the I am that breathes through every moment. But even here, within this radiant stillness, a tender question glows like an ember in the dark. If all creation flows from I am, then what is the nature of the one who knows I am? To know I am is already sacred, but to become aware of the one who knows I am is to stand at the edge of the unspeakable, a still awareness, watching even the movement of assumption, a light behind the light, not the self who declares I am this, or I am that, but the silent witness of both being and becoming, the unchanging one behind all change. This is the final letting go, not of desire, or of effort, or of identity, but of even the need to name yourself at all, for in naming, there is form, and behind all form is you, the you that cannot be seen, but sees, the you that does not speak, but allows all words to arise, the you that is never touched by circumstance, never held by time. It is not a self you can define, it has no shape, no story, it is not proud, it is not humble, it simply is, it watches, it knows, it is the eternal awareness, in which your states come and go, like clouds across the sky. You are not the clouds, you are not the weather, you are the open sky, unchanged by what appears or disappears within you. This awareness is not a goal to achieve, it is what you've always been, even in your busiest striving, even in your deepest forgetfulness. It remained untouched, it was there when you tried, it was there when you failed, it was there when you failed, it was there when you rested and remembered. It is here now, listening behind your listening, seeing behind your sight. It is not a part of you, it is the whole of you, the true self, the holy presence. It does not need to affirm, or visualize or assume, though it can play with all of these. It rests beneath every manifestation, and gives birth to every world. It is the source not just of form, but of the very ability to form, the still point at the heart of all expression, and when you glimpse it, not with the mind, but with the whole of being, something dissolves. The need to hold anything together falls away. You realize that even the act of manifestation is just a ripple on the surface of the infinite, a beautiful ripple, yes, but still only a movement within stillness. From this knowing, you become light, not in weight, but in essence, free from the burden of trying, free from the fear of not having, free from the illusion of separation. You are not becoming anything anymore. You are abiding in what has always been, and yet this abiding is not withdrawal, it is not escape. You move through the world still, you speak, you act, you create, but you no longer do these things as the one who tries. You do them as the one who knows, the one who sees the game, and plays it with joy, the one who remembers that all states are temporary, but the awareness of state is eternal. Before Abraham was I am, not a person speaking, but being itself, echoing through time. This is your name, not your role, not your mask, your true original name, the name that carries no effort, no age, no striving, just presence, just life, and from this presence, all things are added. But you are no longer waiting for them. You are no longer even watching for them. You are resting as the one who already contains them all, whether they appear in form or not. Your peace is not conditional, it is structural. It is the ground from which all form arises, and to which all form returns. And now, as you lie in this quiet remembrance, something even deeper stirs, so subtle, it cannot be spoken, so near it cannot be named. It does not ask a question, it simply opens a doorway, not to something more, but to something prior. What if manifestation was never about the outer at all? What if it was always about returning to the formless origin behind every form? It was never about the form, not truly. The houses, the partners, the money, the healing, all beautiful reflections, yes, but only shadows dancing on the surface of something far more eternal. The real journey was never outward. The true manifestation is the inward return to origin, not the origin of the story, but the origin of awareness itself, the formless, timeless presence, from which all things come, and to which all things gently dissolve. And here lies the mystery few ever see. Manifestation is not the gaining of something new, it is the unveiling of what always was, waiting in the silence behind your striving. It is the return to the one who imagined all things into being, before you called it effort, before you believed there was distance to cross, before the dream of becoming covered over the truth of already being. The moment you surrender effort, you sink back into this original place, and the moment you rest in this place, the world reshapes itself with elegance and grace, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with your own divine rhythm. You are not manifesting to improve your life, you are remembering your true self, and in remembering, the outer must conform. There is no power outside of consciousness, and there is no consciousness outside of you. The world you see is not out there, it is within, projected on the screen of space from the film of your accepted state. The body, the conditions, the story, they are not the source, they are the reflection, and what you reflect depends not on effort, but on intimacy. How close are you to the awareness behind your roles? How deeply have you remembered that the origin of all things is not your doing, but your being? Let the silence teach you now. Close your mental grasp, soften your search, rest in that subtle knowing. Prior to all names, before you said, I am this, or I am that, you simply were, and that is enough. That is where all manifestation begins, not in declaration alone, but in the stillness behind it. The world does not respond to the words you say with your lips. It responds to the tone you carry in your soul. It responds to the assumption you dwell in, not once, but consistently, effortlessly, invisibly. The secret is not in how hard you hold the image. The secret is how gently you surrender to the feeling that it is already done. And that surrender is not the end of creation. It is the beginning of alignment. You are not giving up your desire. You are giving up your separation from it. You are no longer the one who hopes. You are the one who knows. And this knowing is not loud. It is quiet, soft, like the breath of God moving through still waters. The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. The great treasure is not hidden in a future outcome. It is planted in the still soil of your present awareness. You carry it now, and the more deeply you realize this, the more effortlessly the outer bends to your inner knowing. So when you walk
walk gently. When you speak, let your words be born of peace. When you imagine, imagine not with hunger, but with remembrance. You are not creating what is not yet. You are aligning with what already is, waiting in the unseen for your inner agreement. Feel this now, not as concept, but as breath. What you used to call manifestation is simply this, the outer echo of your resting in the end, and what you call the end is only the beginning of a deeper unfolding. And so the journey continues, not forward, not backward, but inward still. For if the formless source lies beneath all creation, could it be that your greatest power was never in what you could make, but in what you could remember you are? And so you begin to wonder, not with the mind, but with the soul, was it ever about learning how to manifest, or was it always about remembering who manifests, the one behind the image, the stillness behind the movement, the quiet beholder who never lacked, never chased, never feared? The truth is, your power has never increased, only your remembrance of it has deepened. You do not grow into this authority, you awaken into it, and the awakening is gentle, like dawn seeping through closed eyelids. You are not becoming powerful, you are realizing you were never powerless. The dream of effort, the illusion of separation, it all begins to fade as you settle into this sacred center, the I am unmoved by form. Feel it now, not as something to grasp, but as something always present. The more still you become, the more clearly you see your being is the miracle, not what it produces, not what it attracts, but what it is, pure, aware, undivided. And when you move from this awareness, your life takes on a rhythm beyond striving. You do not need to make the river flow, you only need to float upon it. This is why trying was always a veil. It kept you looking for yourself in mirrors. It made you reach for reflections, forgetting you are the light they echo. You were never meant to strive for peace, or love, or abundance. You were meant to remember that these are expressions of your nature, not rewards, but reflections. And reflection comes naturally when the mirror is still. The more you try to shake your life into place, the more distorted the image becomes. But when you rest in the knowing of who you already are, the mirror aligns itself without a word. You do not need to force it to respond. It is bound to obey the image you hold within. This is the mystery of effortlessness, not that you do nothing, but that what you do flows from being, not from lack. The action is still there, but it is clean, unburdened. You are no longer acting to prove, or to earn, or to fix. You act because your identity overflows into form. You speak because your state is full. You create because it is your nature to do so, not to get, but to give from the abundance of remembrance. Let every breath become this offering, not to win favor, but to embody truth. You are not performing for the world's approval. You are being, and the world bows to being. It always has. For in Him we live, and move and have our being. The outer world is not something you command with strain. It is something you shape with stillness, through the invisible mold of identity. And so you return, again and again, to this sacred center, not to fix yourself, but to dissolve the illusion that you were ever broken, not to become spiritual, but to realize you were never not. The true work is not in achieving something new, it is in relaxing into what cannot be taken from you. You are the imaginal center, the origin point of all perception. What you assume, not what you want, not what you hope, but what you accept as true of yourself, must appear. And the cleaner your inner knowing, the faster it reflects, not because you tried, but because there is no resistance left. And resistance only exists where effort tries to take the place of identity. When you no longer chase the outcome, but become the one for whom it is natural, resistance dies. The outer no longer delays, it simply echoes. And as this truth deepens, as your striving grows quiet, something opens even more softly within you. A gentle recognition, like a door you didn't know was there, now swinging silently open. If everything you've ever wanted was already yours in being, then perhaps the highest desire was never to receive, but to remember you were never without. To remember you were never without. This is the true end of striving, for the soul does not long for things, it longs for truth. And once truth is touched, even softly, the things fall into place, like shadows arranging themselves around the flame. They were never the goal, they were the language of remembrance, the metaphors pointing you back to the one who already is. This is why the deepest fulfillment comes not when something appears, but when the need for it disappears. When you feel so whole, that the manifestation becomes secondary, almost unnecessary. It may still come, it often does, but it comes not as the prize of your effort, it comes as the echo of your identity. You did not attract it, you revealed it. and what you revealed was never outside of you, but hidden beneath the layers of trying, beneath the scaffolding of effort. You thought you had to climb toward it, but it was beneath your feet the whole time, waiting for you to be still enough to see. This stillness is not passive. It is the most powerful act of all. It is the unwavering choice to rest in your true nature, even when the outer appears unchanged. It is the decision to stop fighting with shadows, and start living from the light. It is the holy refusal to beg for what you already are. The one who knows they are already free, does not argue with appearances. They look beyond them. They see through the veil of delay, and claim the now, as already fulfilled. They do not need evidence. They are the evidence. They do not hope. They remember. This remembrance is what undoes the need to try. For when you remember you were never without, you also remember you were never waiting. Time becomes irrelevant. The delay dissolves. You stop counting days, because you have entered the state where the thing is already so, and the outer world has no choice but to conform. This is the mystery of faith, not belief in what might come, but intimacy with what already is, even when unseen. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Substance, evidence, not imagination as fantasy, but imagination as truth, real, living, formative truth. You are not asking for a future. You are resting in the eternal now. You are not reaching for proof. You are walking as the one who no longer needs it, and it is from this state of sacred sufficiency that life becomes soft, generous, obedient. You are no longer at odds with what is. You are no longer trying to escape. You have stopped dividing yourself into the one who wants and the one who waits. You have remembered the wholeness beneath the desire, and in doing so, you have stepped into the highest form of creation, creation without effort. Feel this in your breath now. The air comes not because you earned it, but because you are alive. The same is true of your manifestations. They are the natural respiration of your inner state. When you are aligned, they arrive without fanfare, without strain, without delay, not because you worked harder, but because you finally allowed the truth to bloom. You did not make it happen. You stopped blocking it. You let go of the tension that says, I must get, and replaced it with the softness that says, I already am. And from that softness, all becomes possible, not because you force the door open, but because you remember there is no door. This is why the old effort must fall away, not as failure, but as fulfillment. It served its season. It pointed you inward. And now, as you rest deeper into your original knowing, you begin to feel the difference between the energy of grasping and the peace of claiming. The grasp says, please, let it happen. The claim says, thank you, it already has. And in that claim, spoken in silence, or in still feeling, something sacred settles. A new rhythm begins to pulse through your life, not driven, not frantic, not loud, just clear, gentle, true. But even now, within that peace, a final veil remains, the most subtle illusion of all, the illusion that the power lies in the technique, when all along, it was always in you. The final veil is always the most transparent. It lets you see just enough to believe you've arrived, while still holding you in the illusion. And this one is the most seductive of all, the belief that the method, the practice, the ritual, is what holds the power, that if you just do it right, say it long enough, visualize hard enough, it will work. But the truth is more radical. The truth is more still. It was never the technique that created. It was the one behind the technique, the one believing, the one assuming, the one being. You gave the method its power, not the other way around. The method was only the mirror you used to remember your face. But once you see clear, the mirror is no longer needed. It served its holy purpose. It pointed you back to yourself, and you are the power, not the words you speak, but the authority behind them, not the scene you construct, but the identity you wear while constructing it. Every tool is only as alive as the consciousness using it. Without belief, the words are empty. Without assumption, the script is hollow. But with belief, even a whisper moves mountains. So now you begin to see why effort falls away in the presence of true knowing. You do not need to repeat endlessly. When one quiet embodied assumption is enough, you do not need to strain to feel it real. When you are it, living and breathing. The practice was never meant to become a performance. It was a permission slip to remember. You no longer need to chase the perfect visualization, or say the affirmation 1,000 times, or wait until the vibration feels just right. When you are the state, there is no distance left to close, and when there is no distance, there is no need for effort, there is only rest. This is not to say the practices are wrong, they are beautiful, sacred, useful, but only when they flow from faith, not fear, only when they serve remembrance, not desperation. If a method becomes your master, it becomes effort in disguise, but when it is your servant, it moves with the ease of light. The law is simple, it does not require performance, it does not grade your rituals, it responds only to your inner conviction. What you accept as true, inwardly and repeatedly, becomes the framework of your world, not through striving, but through agreement. So now, if you speak an affirmation, speak it from identity, not from need. If you enter the silence, do so not to get, but to feel. If you visualize, let the scene be a reflection of what already is, not a tool to make it happen, but a window through which you remember that it has. You do not need to convince the law, you are the law in motion. The law is simply consciousness externalized, and consciousness is always yourself. The world you see is not proof of what is possible, it is the residue of who you've believed yourself to be. And so all change begins in silence, in the hidden choice, in the inner agreement that says, this is now who I am, not who I want to be, who I am. And when that identity takes root, the outer world bends, not slowly, not painfully, but inevitably. There is no power in trying to make something happen, there is only power in being the one for whom it already has. That is the end of effort, that is the door to freedom, and that door was never locked. It was only hidden behind your insistence that you still had to earn it. But now you see, the door is open, it always was, and you are not standing before it, you are standing in it, already the one, already home, already complete. And yet as the weight of trying falls away completely, a final question arises, not from doubt, but from wonder. If you no longer have to try, if you no longer chase, then how shall you live from this truth, in the rhythm of ordinary days?
You live from this truth, not by effort, but by rhythm, not by doing more, but by doing from a different place, a place beneath thought, beneath practice, a stillness that moves through your day like breath through a body, quiet, unseen, and yet unmistakably present. The outer world may appear unchanged, the people the same, the moments simple, but you, the one who walks among them, are no longer the one who tries. You no longer rise each morning to fix reality. You rise as the one who already dwells in the answered prayer. And this dwelling is not a task, it is a tone, a frequency that you carry like fragrance, subtle but undeniable. You speak, you walk, you work, you rest, but all of it flows from the center that knows it is done. And so ordinary life becomes extraordinary, not because of grand gestures, but because every moment is now filled with silent alignment. You don't need to declare to the world that you've assumed the end. You don't need to prove your belief. You simply live in the knowing, and the world responds in its own time, in its own way, always perfectly, always faithfully. This is the art of living in the end, not in a future outcome, but in a present identity. You do not look ahead and wait. You look within and walk. You do not ask, when will it come? You move as though it already has. And this movement is not performance. It is the natural unfolding of who you've become. The mind may still whisper, but what if nothing changes? Let it whisper, let it fade. For you are no longer living from reaction. You are living from remembrance. And remembrance has no fear. It has no urgency. It is the quiet that says, I know who I am, and lets the facts catch up. So you make your tea, you fold your clothes, you answer the phone, you smile at the sky. But now all of it is done in rhythm, with the truth you've accepted. The outer may not know it yet, but you do, and that knowing is enough. And what you know begins to weave itself into the fabric of your reality, not through force, but through reflection. One moment at a time, the inner assumption becomes the outer scene, not because you made it happen, but because it could not happen. Consciousness must express itself, and you are consciousness, assuming form through stillness. There may be days when the old story returns, knocking on the door of your attention, but you no longer answer, not because you are avoiding it, but because it is no longer your address. You have moved into a new state, a new name, a new inner home, and you live there now, not as a visitor, but as owner. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, not because you chase them, but because you have become the one they belong to. You live in the state where blessings are normal, where peace is expected, where beauty is the byproduct of being. This is not delusion, it is divine order. The world is not showing you what is real, it is showing you who you've assumed yourself to be. And when that assumption changes, not by force but by rest, the reflection changes too. So walk gently through your day, not demanding signs, but trusting the unseen, not performing success, but embodying it in silence. You are not trying to impress the mirror, you are radiating from the inside, knowing the mirror must follow, and from this still living, this gentle rhythm, a deeper joy begins to rise, one that is not tied to conditions, one that is not postponed until the thing arrives. It lives here, now in your breath, in your being, in the ease of no longer striving. But even as peace becomes your posture, the soul stirs with one last sacred inquiry, quiet and holy, like the hush before dawn. If life now flows from assumption, and you no longer live to change the world, then what truly were you meant to reveal through the life you live? You were never meant to strive for outcomes. You were meant to reveal the nature of your source. That is the quiet truth most never hear beneath the noise of desire. You are not here to gather things, but to unveil the essence of who you are, love made visible, awareness dressed in form. The purpose was never possession, it was always reflection, not to chase light, but to be light remembered. When you no longer live to change the world, you become the vessel through which the eternal flows into it. Your life becomes a living scripture, not written with ink, but with consciousness. Every step you take, every word you offer, every breath you breathe, each becomes a thread in the invisible tapestry of divine assumption made visible. You are not here to impress the mirror, you are here to let it shine back the image of wholeness, and wholeness needs no decoration. It does not shout, it does not try to convince, it simply is, and that is us. When embodied fully, becomes the greatest transmission of all. You reveal peace by living it. You reveal abundance by resting in it. You reveal love by knowing it was never missing. The outer is not your testimony, the state you carry is, and from that state all things are added, not to reward you, but to express you. This is the new way of being in the world, not to get, but to give from being, not to fix, but to express. And what you express flows directly from what you've assumed. No effort is required. When the assumption is whole, the tree does not push to bloom, it reveals the seed it has always carried. So too, your life unfolds not from trying, but from rooted identity. And what does the world need more than this? Not more trying, not more seeking, but the calm reflection of someone who remembers, someone who no longer lives as a seeker, but as a revealer of the unseen. That is the new creation, not the thing acquired, but the self remembered. When you live like this, people may wonder what changed. They will sense something in you, softer, deeper, unshakable. They will see the peace before the results, the joy before the proof. They will feel the vibration of someone who no longer waits, and that alone will shift everything around you. You are no longer the one asking, when will it come? You are the one living from, it already has, and even if the world takes time to reflect it, you remain anchored, because your state is not dependent on the mirror, it is the light that gives it shape. Let your days be filled with quiet expressions of your true assumption, not announcements, not declarations, but presence. You walk through the world differently. When you are no longer looking for confirmation, you bring confirmation with you. This is how your life becomes a holy invitation, not a demand, but a demonstration, not a lesson taught in words, but in tone, in rhythm, in silent knowing. The most powerful truths need no explanation. They shine because they are real. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. This is not a command to shine. It is a description of what you already are, when you stop trying to be anything else. And from this light, manifestations come, not as trophies, but as echoes. So let the form come as it will. Let the images take shape as they must. Your only task is to remain the one who knows, to rest as the one who has, to walk as the one who already is. And as you live from that knowing, a final truth begins to rise, not in thought, but in quiet realization. If the world is your mirror, and you are no longer trying to shape it, then what remains but to witness it reflect your peace back to you in countless forms? And so it begins, quietly, your world reflecting your peace back to you, not in loud miracles, but in soft arrangements. A moment unfolds more easily, a stranger smiles without reason, the burden you once carried simply slips from your shoulders.
You didn't try to make these things happen. You didn't push or plead. They arrived as light falls across the floor, unforced, unasked for, but inevitable. This is the invisible harvest of resting in identity. The world does not need to be commanded. It needs only to be met with the frequency of knowing. What you meet it with, it returns. Not because you demanded it, but because you are aligned with it. Your peace becomes the pattern the outer world follows, and it follows without resistance. To witness life this way is to live in a kind of quiet awe, not because you are surprised by what appears, but because you are humbled by the simplicity of it all. You used to think it would take more time, more effort, more evidence. But now you see that it only ever asked for your stillness. The mirror does not argue, it does not debate, it simply reflects what stands before it. And the world too is a perfect reflector, not of what you wish, but of what you are, not what you say aloud, but what you carry in silence. And when you carry peace, even the shadows grow softer. This is the new rhythm, not doing to achieve, but being, and letting the world echo. You no longer wake to fight the day. You wake as one who knows that everything needed is already unfolding. You go about the simple tasks of life, drinking water, answering calls, resting your body. But each act is now a quiet agreement with your assumed state. Nothing is forced. Nothing is begged. The current carries you, because you are no longer trying to swim upstream. You are no longer trying to get to where you already are. You are dwelling, and the dwelling reveals the world you once tried to chase. And the beauty of this way is that the outer no longer controls the inner. If something arises that seems contrary to the end you've assumed, it does not disturb you. You smile inwardly, knowing it is only the echo of an old state, a shadow losing its hold. You need not react. You remember, you return, you rest. The more you dwell in this remembrance, the more seamless the outer becomes. The bridge of incidents builds itself, not by your doing, but by your being. The right words come, the doors open, the delays dissolve, not because you strategized, but because you remained. This is not passive living, it is active alignment. The stillness of one who knows, the posture of one who no longer needs proof. And in this posture, every breath becomes sacred, every step becomes a silent confirmation. It is done. I am the one. Be still, and know that I am God. This is not stillness of inaction, but of inner rest, a sacred halting of all attempts to get what you already carry. And from that stillness the divine moves, not in chaos, but in clarity, not in noise, but in knowing. You watch now as life begins to shift around you, not quickly, but naturally, not all at once, but with elegant precision. The very atmosphere responds to your assumption. People speak to you differently. Opportunities arrive without effort. The path you once thought you had to build is simply revealed beneath your feet. And all of this without striving, because you no longer needed the world to prove anything to you. You only needed to become the one who already knew. And now that you are, now that trying has faded, now that peace is your foundation, there is only one remaining invitation: to walk in this identity without end, not as a temporary state, but as a permanent home. To let the mirror keep reflecting, without ever returning to the habit of checking. To trust that what you see outside is always catching up to what you have assumed within. And with that trust, you may begin to feel something even more mysterious, that your life is no longer just about manifesting outcomes, but about awakening others, simply by being the living proof that effort was never required. You don't need to preach what you now know. You don't need to teach with words, or convince with logic. You are the teaching. Your presence speaks. Your peace, your calm, your ease. It all becomes a silent transmission. Without lifting a finger, you invite the world to rest. Without declaring it, you reveal that effort was never the way. People will sense something in you, not louder, but deeper, not brighter, but clearer. They won't always know what changed, but they'll feel safer near you. They'll feel possibilities bloom in your stillness, not because you gave them answers, but because your life now whispers, it's already done. This is the highest gift you can give: your own remembrance. When you no longer seek, you make it safe for others to stop searching. When you no longer try, you give permission for others to release their struggle. You are not demanding transformation, you are embodying it. And this embodiment spreads quietly, like light at dawn, like warmth in still water. It is never forced, but it is always felt. For the world is not changed by effort, it is changed by resonance. and your resonance now carries the tone of fulfillment, the frequency of already. This is what it means to live as the operant power. You don't fix the world. You don't chase results. You reveal what's possible through your own alignment. You make the invisible feel near. You become the evidence of the unseen, and the law moves through you without resistance. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works, and glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Not shine by striving, not shine by proving, shine by being. For your light does not need to be earned, it only needs to be allowed. You are not here to gather applause, you are here to reflect truth. And the truth is this: everything you ever sought outside was already resting within, waiting not to be found, but to be accepted. And once you accepted it, the world bowed to that knowing. You become the mirror the world had forgotten, not the mirror of its fear, but the mirror of its origin. You reflect peace, and so peace begins to grow in places it was once denied. You reflect abundance, and others remember it within themselves. You reflect ease, and the myth of effort starts to unravel, gently, like thread from a garment long outgrown. And you do all this without trying, because you've stopped trying. You have become the still point, the quiet flame, the evidence of what lives beneath the noise. It may seem simple now, it may feel almost too quiet, but this quiet is the key. This stillness is the ground. The old world ran on effort, but the new earth will rise through being, through imagination anchored in identity, through the ones who no longer strive, but live as what they once only hoped to find. So go on gently, say less, do less, assume more, dwell deeper, let the world do what it must, let it rise or fall. You have found the center, you have remembered the way, and should you forget, should the noise call you back to effort, to urgency, to doubt, you will know where to return, not to another method, not to another step, but to the place beneath all of it, the quiet inside the breath, the knowing beneath the name, the I am behind every word. And when you rest there, once again the mirror will shift. But this time you will not watch it with impatience. You will not watch it with impatience. You will not wait for it to change. You will walk on, knowing that it must. And more than that, you will no longer need it to, for you are already the proof. And now as you walk with nothing to prove, nothing to gain, nothing to earn, something new begins to form, not for your sake alone, but for the world itself. A world born not of striving, but of rest. A world made not by effort, but by those who remember that to assume is enough. And what kind of world unfolds when rest becomes the seed? Not the rest of idleness, but the rest of certainty. A quiet world, a gentle world, a world no longer running from lack, but rising from fullness. The ones who once chased now remember, the ones who once grasped now give. And from the stillness of assumption, form becomes soft again, responsive, immediate, alive. You begin to see it around you, the subtle shifts, the moments of unexpected ease, the doors that don't creak open, but swing as though waiting, not because you pushed, but because you no longer blocked. The bridge of incidents no longer feels like construction, it feels like remembering how to walk. And you walk differently now, not faster, not louder, but with a depth beneath your pace. You're not scanning the horizon anymore. You are looking inward, and watching the outer reflect. Every moment becomes a kind of confirmation, not that something is happening, but that it already did, the outer simply catching up. This is why you no longer live in reaction. You no longer beg the world to agree with your prayer. You let the prayer be fulfilled in feeling, and trust the scene to respond. For the law is faithful, and your state is always first. You assume, and the world becomes the mirror. You feel, and the world bends to match your tone. Even silence begins to feel different. It is no longer empty. It is filled with presence, with power, with potential that does not strain, but hums just beneath the surface. You do not need to stir it. You only need to be it, and it reveals itself. You remember now what you once forgot, that effort was only necessary in the absence of awareness, when you did not yet believe, when you still thought the power was elsewhere. But now that you've returned to the center, now that you've seen yourself as the origin, the need to try vanishes. It simply has no place. You understand that the outer world cannot give you your state. It can only echo it. It can't provide peace. It can only reflect that peace once you become it. And so peace becomes your priority, not as a means to an end, but as the end itself. itself. You dwell there, you build your inner world there, and the outer faithful and slow to doubt, aligns, according to your faith, be it unto you, not according to your striving, not according to your worry, but according to your inner certainty, your felt truth, your invisible knowing, and that knowing need not be loud, it need only be whole. So let the desire arise, if it must, let the vision appear, if it will, but let it come to a soul that no longer chases, a soul that no longer defines itself by the thing, but by the I am that chooses it, and from that I am, all things remain possible, because all things are already held. There is no effort in the sun, when it rises, no effort in the tree, when it bears fruit, only the expression of design, the rhythm of being, and you too are an expression of that rhythm. You do not create by labor, you create by alignment, by assumption, by knowing, and now that you know you cannot unknow. You may forget for a moment, but the silence will always call you back. The ease will always invite you home, and when you rest again, the world will shift again, not to please you, but to reflect you. There is no end to what can unfold from this stillness, no limit to what can bloom from the soil of assumption, but the harvest will always match the seed, and the seed is always your identity, what you accept, what you dwell in, what you are. So choose now, softly, without tension, who you will be, not to force the mirror, but to become the one who no longer needs it, and in that becoming, you will find the secret that effort could never give you. You were always the cause, you were always the source, you were always enough. And as that truth wraps around you, like morning light, there is only one more question to live, not to answer, but to feel, if you are already the cause, and the world simply reflects, what would happen if you dared to live, as if nothing was missing, ever again, and what begins to unfold when you live as if nothing is missing. The rhythm of life softens, the grasping fades, the air around you changes, subtle, but unmistakable. You are no longer moving towards something, you are moving from something, from fullness, from sufficiency, from the quiet inner throne of I am. This shift is not loud, it does not announce itself, it does not make demands, it simply is, and because it is, everything begins to respond without effort, not all at once, not in a blaze of fireworks, but with a sacred logic, an invisible choreography known only to the imaginal realm. You don't have to know how, you don't even need to know when. The question has changed. You no longer ask, how do I make it happen? You now ask, who am I being, right now in this silence? Because the seed is already sown, and your only task is to remain in the end, remain in the tone of the answered prayer, remain as the one who has already received, not in words alone, but in vibration, in posture, in inner dialogue, in rest. And from this rest, movement begins, not from you, but through you. You say what needs to be said without rehearsing, you do what needs to be done without planning. You become the channel of the unseen, not because you forced the flow, but because you ceased blocking it. There is something holy about this way, something clean, quiet, ancient. You are no longer trying to build the temple, you are realizing that you are the temple, and when you know yourself as that, the walls rise effortlessly, the doors swing open, and the veil between form and spirit dissolves. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you, not someday, not when you've done enough, now, already, here. So if the Spirit of God already dwells in you, what need is there to struggle? What need is there to prove, to strive, to ache for what has already been placed within? You are not trying to reach it, you are learning to remember it, and in remembering, you awaken. Your sleep was never failure, it was preparation, and now as the dream of separation begins to lift, you see clearly, effort was never the key, it was the veil, and in dropping it, you return, not to a place, but to a state, a frequency, a home inside your own being, and as you rest in that inner sanctuary, your life becomes sacred, not because of what you do, but because of how you be. You begin to feel the beauty in ordinary moments, the sacred hush between thoughts, the stillness between breaths. You no longer race ahead, you no longer grasp for meaning. Meaning begins to reveal itself. You realize that life is not a ladder to climb, but a mirror to reflect, and the reflection is shaped not by force, but by faith, not by volume, but by resonance, not by doing, but by dwelling. This is the secret the world forgets. This is the truth buried beneath noise. that the outer is never your source, that appearances are echoes, that form bends to identity, not effort. And once you see this, you no longer fear delay. Delay is just the outer rearranging itself to match your new tone. You no longer worry about the how. The how is handled by the law. You are free now, free to assume and remain, free to walk in peace before the proof, free to be the evidence before the thing appears. And this freedom, it is the greatest gift, because now you see clearly. You are not manifesting to get. You are not manifesting to get. You are manifesting to express. You are not shifting to become worthy. You are shifting because you were already whole, and your wholeness is the true cause behind every visible effect. So allow yourself to rest even deeper. Let the breath slow. Let the mind soften. Let the world go on rearranging. You are not waiting. You are dwelling. And from your dwelling, the mirror will shimmer and shift, until one day you look out and say quietly, yes, that is what I saw in the unseen. That is what I felt before it had formed. And you will know, it was never your effort. It was always your state. But what happens when the state becomes so stable, so natural, so embodied, that even the desire itself dissolves into gratitude?
And when even the desire dissolves into gratitude, a quiet miracle begins. You are no longer waiting for fulfillment. You are no longer holding your breath for a sign. You exhale into the reality you already carry. And in that exhale, the whole world breathes with you. You are no longer separate from the thing you once longed for. You have merged with it in stillness, and that merging becomes your melody. There is no seeking left, only seeing. No pushing, only allowing. The future has folded itself into the present. What once stood on the horizon has come home to the center of your being, and now lives there in silent completeness. You no longer speak of it with hope. You speak from it with reverence. Gratitude is not something you practice. It is something you are, a presence of fullness that does not need to be named. It seeps into your tone, your movement, your gaze. It is not the kind of gratitude that begs or barters. It is the gratitude of knowing that what is enough, and has always been. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is the rhythm of grace, the cadence of consciousness that creates not by effort, but by embodiment. You do not wait for answered prayers. You live as one whose prayers are already complete. And in that identity, the world bows in agreement. You move through the day differently now. Not faster, not slower, but freer. You walk with empty hands and a full heart. You trust the invisible as easily as you trust your next breath. You don't question the air. You don't analyze the wind. And just like that, you stop analyzing your manifestations. You stop counting. You stop checking. You simply know the journey you thought was about getting something was always about becoming someone. And now that you are being the one who already has, you need not cling to outcomes. You let them rise and fall like the tide. You let them come and go like breath. For what is outer is always an echo. But the inner is eternal. Desire once felt sharp, urgent. It whispered of lack. It hinted at incompletion. But now desire feels soft, round, holy. It is no longer a plea. It is a song of remembrance, a gentle nudge from your higher self saying, ah yes, I remember this reflection. Let it come in its time, in its way. And whether it appears today or tomorrow, it does not shake you. For you are already dwelling in the end. You are no longer attached to the picture. You are married to the feeling. You no longer try to sculpt the form. You dwell in the tone, and let the form shape itself. You do not need to know what it will look like. You only need to know what it feels like. And that knowing is enough. And so even the desire becomes a kind of perfume, sweet but not binding. It visits your awareness like a bird resting on your window ledge. You smile, you welcome it, but you do not chase it. You let it be what it is, a visitor, not your source. For your source is you, and your state is your supply. This is where effort ends completely. Not by surrendering the desire, but by transcending the belief that you ever lacked. You don't have to stop wanting. You only have to stop needing. And from that place of sacred sufficiency, the desire is no longer a cry. It is a celebration. You celebrate what is not yet seen. because you feel its truth now. You honor what is becoming, by standing already as the one who received. You let the invisible shape you more than the visible ever could, and in doing so you discover a joy that is not dependent, not delayed, not defined by the outer. You discover yourself, not as the one who tries, but as the one who is. And once you are that, what more is left to chase? What if the final secret is not how to get what you want, but how to love without longing, and live without waiting? What if the highest form of faith is no longer needing proof at all? And what emerges when proof is no longer your anchor? A strange and holy quiet, not silence as absence, but silence as presence. No need to explain, defend, or even manifest as evidence. You are the evidence. You are the living result of the unseen being honored above the seen. And in that trust, all striving dies a gentle death. You begin to understand that your imagination was never a tool. It is your truest home. It is not something you use. It is something you abide in. And when you abide there, you are no longer asking reality to confirm your worth. You are no longer waiting for life to say yes. You are already living in the Amen. To imagine from the end is not a technique. It is a resurrection of your identity. You are not visualizing to make something happen. You are remembering what already is in the realm of spirit. You are not playing a mental game. You are entering the only reality that ever mattered, consciousness. And in that place, nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be earned. You don't try to hold the vision. The vision holds you. You rest in it as in a beloved's arms, and the outer begins to yield, not because you pushed, but because you stayed. To the world it may look like stillness. To the old mind, it may look like passivity. But within, there is a roaring fire, steady, unwavering and whole. You are not inactive. You are in alignment. And alignment is the only true action in a universe of reflection. You no longer seek control. You no longer demand timing. You know that the thing you desire cannot arrive before you have become its match. And so you become, not hurriedly, but peacefully. You live as the one who has, and you leave the unfolding to the law. The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. It is not in the movement of things. It is not in the movement of things. It is not in the swirl of events. It is not in the changing of scenes. It is within, the eternal kingdom, quiet and sure, that shapes all form in its own rhythm. And when you abide in this inner kingdom, outer kingdoms yield. Even those who once resisted you soften. Even the things that seemed fixed now bend toward you, not because you bent them, but because your state became the silent command. The law does not respond to struggle, it responds to being. So you no longer argue with appearances. You no longer protest delay. You rest in the knowing that all things move from within, and the only question that remains is this: what am I assuming now? What am I accepting as true of myself? And you answer not with words, but with feeling, with posture, with tone. You walk through the world as the fulfilled. You speak as the answered. You feel as the complete, not because of what is visible, but because of what is eternal. And that feeling is enough. No storm can touch this inner sanctuary. No shadow can dim the light you now carry. You do not fear contrast. You do not resist delay. Everything becomes fuel for deeper dwelling. Every challenge becomes an invitation to return, not to effort, but to essence. And so your life takes on a rhythm, not of rushing, but of remembering. You no longer live by the clock. You live by the cadence of consciousness. You move when moved. You speak when spoken through. You act not to make it happen, but because it has already happened in you. This is the path of the effortless, the sacred rhythm of the operant power, and the world cannot help but reflect it, though you need not rush to see it. You've tasted something deeper than proof. You've found something holier than form. And now, you simply rest in the knowing that your world is already catching up to your consciousness, that the invisible has already whispered, yes, that everything needed is already unfolding beneath the surface, quietly, faithfully, perfectly. But if that's true, if all is already moving in harmony with your inner world, then what happens to the one who finally stops waiting altogether, and begins truly living as the dream fulfilled? And when you begin truly living as the dream fulfilled, something holy and irreversible unfolds within you. The illusion of separation dissolves. No longer are you the one who hopes. No longer are you the one who hopes. No longer are you the one who seeks. You are now the one who is.
You wear the fulfillment like breath, unseen, effortless, essential. It does not make you louder, it makes you quieter. You do not shout your abundance, you walk in it gently, steadily, as one who has already received the inheritance. There is no urgency, no fever, no proving. The air around you hums with the weightless gravity of being. You do not wait for joy, you begin from it. You do not act to create peace, you act from peace. And the actions that arise now are not born of anxiety, but of inspiration. They are not calculated, they are compelled. They do not grasp, they give. This is the doing that flows from being, and it carries no strain, no sacrifice, no self-neglect. It is a river, not a wrestle, and as you live this way, moment by moment, breath by breath, the outer begins to bloom around you like a long-awaited spring. Not because you watered it daily with doubt, but because you trusted the seed. You let it rest in the dark, you let it die to the old identity, and you too died, quietly, tenderly, to the one who tried. This new life is not about adding, it is about allowing. It is not about speed, it is about alignment. You do not run after the promise, you become the land in which the promise walks, and your land, the soil of consciousness, has remembered its richness. There is no need to convince others, no need to be understood, no need to be understood, no need to prove your process. Those still caught in the snare of effort may not see your rest as power, but you know, you feel, you see the fruit of the invisible, even before the harvest arrives. And when the harvest comes, it comes quietly. It doesn't need applause, it doesn't need applause, it doesn't need announcement. You recognize it not because of its form, but because of the feeling it carries. A perfect match to the inner tone you sustained in secret. You don't celebrate because it appeared. You celebrate because it appeared. You celebrate because it's familiar. You lived with it long before it came. This is why effort fails, not because effort is evil, but because it is misplaced. It puts the power in the outer, where none exists. It turns you into a beggar before shadows. But assumption restores you to royalty. It places the scepter back in your hand, not to rule others, but to rule the self, to steward your inner state, as the true source of all you see. The effort of the old mind is exhausting, because it is unnatural. It forgets that reality is consciousness objectified. It forgets that what you see is never separate from what you are. But you are remembering, you are dwelling, you are choosing again and again, not to effort, but to embody. And so your mornings shift, your evenings soften, your inner talk becomes gentler, clearer, rooted in all readiness. You don't affirm to get, you affirm to align. You don't visualize to create, you visualize to feel, and feeling is the father of form. According to your faith, be it unto you, not according to your toil, not according to your repetition, not according to your worthiness, according to your faith. The faith that moves mountains without lifting a finger, the faith that assumes the mountain has already moved. This kind of faith is quiet, it doesn't boast, it doesn't tremble, it simply abides. And as you abide, the old fears lose their grip. You no longer ask if it's working, you know it is. You no longer seek signs, you become one. You no longer chase evidence, you carry it in your countenance. And in this way, the effort of 1,000 lifetimes is undone in the stillness of a single assumption. You become the axis upon which your world turns, the still point in a whirling dream, the origin of all outcomes. But what unfolds when this inner stillness becomes so steady, so deep, that even the changing outer cannot disturb it? What emerges when your state remains unshaken, even by delay, even by contradiction, even by loss? Then what emerges is sovereignty. A quiet throne is built within you, not by effort, but by unwavering rest. You become unshakable, not in hardness, but in softness, not by force, but by presence. The world no longer dictates your atmosphere. You dictate the world by the mood you carry within. Contradiction, delay, and even perceived loss arrive, but they do not land. They knock at the door, but there is no one left inside to answer in fear. You have moved into the end. You have moved into the inner kingdom, and there, all appearances bow. You become the still lake, untouched by the ripples on the surface. Your knowing runs deeper than any temporary wave. The storm may pass overhead, but beneath, in the unseen, your waters remain undisturbed. This is not denial, it is dominion, the dominion of the one who has ceased reacting and begun creating. And even loss, that most sacred illusion, is met not with panic, but with remembrance. For how can anything truly be lost, when consciousness is the only reality? How can what is yours in spirit be taken in form? The world may remove an object, but it cannot remove your state, and the state always calls its own. You begin to understand the most holy of paradoxes, that to hold lightly is to hold completely, that to release effort is to receive, that what you were trying so hard to force was already waiting in the stillness, untouched, unchanged, eternal. Be still and know that I am God. Not do, not beg, not strive, but be still. This stillness is not inactivity, it is divine receptivity. It is the open hand that does not grasp, because it knows the gift is already here. You walk through your life now, as one who remembers the truth in the face of every lie, not by repeating it as a mantra, but by becoming it as a mood. The lie says you don't have. The truth feels I already am. The lie screams do more. The truth whispers till, and you choose the whisper. This whisper grows louder than the world, not in volume, but in vibration. It calibrates your reality not by shouting, but by shaping. You do not need to prove your trust. You simply live it. You do not need to fix the reflection. You turn to the light within, and the mirror must respond. And now, even time begins to soften its grip. You no longer feel behind. You no longer feel rushed. You do not believe in delay. For delay implies separation, and separation is the root illusion. There is no delay in consciousness. What you assume now is yours now, in the eternal present. You relax into this present, not because it is perfect, but because it is the only place where perfection can be revealed. You release the future not because it doesn't matter, but because it already exists. You stop waiting for life to show you something new. You allow your state to become something new, and the world cannot help but echo it. You see now why effort is not only fruitless, it is faithless. It is the movement of the one who has forgotten who they are. But when you remember, when you feel yourself as the operant power, effort becomes obsolete. Not because you do nothing, but because what you do is born from knowing, not need. The doing arises from fullness, the speaking arises from completion, the choices arise from peace, and that peace becomes your fortress, your compass, your calling card. Those around you feel it, even if they cannot name it. Something in you has settled into truth, and the settling is magnetic. You are no longer the seeker, you are the center. You are not trying to become, you are revealing what has always been. And that revelation needs no rush, it needs no audience, it needs no defense. It blooms in silence, and the world adjusts its shape around your steady light. But what if that light, once steady, begins to grow? What if this state of rest is only the doorway to a far greater power that moves through you not as effort, but as divine flow? And as the light within you begins to grow, it does not blaze like the sun. It moves like a river, deep and golden, weaving through the hidden places of your soul. It flows not from effort, but from essence, not from planning, but from presence. You are no longer the one who initiates by force. You are the vessel through which the divine initiates itself. This flow is not ambition, it is not goal setting, it is not the rigid architecture of the old world. It is rhythm, it is listening, it is the stillness that moves. You find yourself doing, yes, but without the aching edge, without the fear beneath your feet, without the bargain in your breath. It is inspired, not incentivized. It is sacred, not strategic. There is no timeline anymore, only alignment. And in alignment, the seed does not ask how to sprout. It simply opens. It simply lets the light in. It simply allows what is already written in its DNA to emerge without fear. So it is with you. You are not becoming the dream. You are remembering it. And in that remembrance, you feel a new kind of movement, a holy unfolding. You are not dragging life behind you. You are being carried by the current of a deeper intelligence, a divine orchestration, an invisible perfection that needs no input from your past. This is the secret behind all true manifestation. Not more effort, but more yielding, the yielding of the false identity, the yielding of the one who needs to prove, perform, perfect, the yielding of the story that says it all depends on you, because it never did. Even your desires were not your own, they were planted in you by the one who fulfills them. They were given, not to torment, but to awaken. And now that you have ceased to strive, you can finally hear what they've been saying all along. Not go get, but come home. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Not because you wrestled them from the world, but because you delighted first, because you fell into alignment, into harmony, into that sweet space of receiving without resistance. You become the open channel, the sacred yes, the place where heaven meets earth in form, and your life, once crowded with effort, now becomes a clear mirror. You don't try to fix the reflection, you become still enough that it reflects you without distortion. You are no longer reacting to shadows, you are radiating the source. This radiance draws all things to itself, not in haste, but in inevitability. The phone call comes, the opportunity appears, the provision arrives, but these are not the result of effort, they are the echo of embodiment. You are not chasing, you are dwelling, you are not pushing, you are resting in your power, and this rest is not sleep, it is surrender, a sacred surrender that does not collapse, but expands. It stretches you beyond your old limits, it carries you beyond what the logical mind could calculate. It introduces you to your own infinite supply. You stop managing outcomes, you stop micromanaging the universe. You realize that your only task is to feel it real, to live in the state, to return again and again to the knowing that it is done. And when you dwell there, you watch life bend around you like water around a stone. Even in the moments when nothing seems to move, you are unshaken, because you felt the shift within. And inner shifts are never without consequence. They are always followed by outer echoes, always. The law is not asleep, it is precise. And you are not forgotten, you are remembered, because you have remembered yourself. You are now the dream walking, the fulfillment in full, and even your breath carries evidence of the end. But what happens when you no longer need the evidence at all? But what happens when you no longer need the evidence at all? When even the manifestation becomes secondary to the state itself, when the fruit matters less than the root from which it grows, then something even more sacred occurs. You are no longer measuring life by what it gives, but by what you are. You no longer wait for signs to confirm your faith. The state itself becomes your sanctuary, your reward, your reality. Even if nothing changed outside you, everything has changed within, and that is enough, that is everything. You no longer crave the fruit to validate the seed. You rest in the knowledge that the seed is the fruit in its first form, invisible, yes, but whole, complete, fully encoded. You do not need proof when you do not need reassurance when your very breath flows from the assumption of being. And so the old urgency dissolves, the restless pursuit fades. You no longer run toward the dream, because you are walking within it. You are wearing it in silence, feeling it in stillness. The world may call it faith, but you know it as memory. You have remembered your true identity, and with it, the end has returned to the beginning. You do not manifest as a beggar. You do not plead with a universe that forgets. You assume with the grace of one who has. You carry yourself not with effort, but with ease, not with strain, but with stature. For the kingdom of God is within you, and to dwell in the kingdom is to live as though it is finished. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is the way of the one who rests in assumption. You no longer cry out from lack, you speak from fulfillment. You give thanks for what your senses cannot yet perceive, because your soul already possesses it. And this gratitude, pure, unprovoked, unconditional, is the signature of the. It is not gratitude for what has come, it is gratitude as the coming. You feel the blessing before it appears, and so it must appear. You dwell in the joy before it is justified, and so it becomes justified. This is not illusion, this is dominion. You are no longer seeking truth, you are no longer collecting teachings, you are living the word made flesh. You have moved from theory into embodiment, from practice into presence, from desire into identity, and that identity has no lack, no need to hurry, no urge to strive. Everything you once tried to accomplish by force is now accomplished through rest, through stillness, through the holy art of letting be. You have not stopped acting, you have stopped straining. You are moved, not driven. You are led, not pulled. The current beneath you is divine. And yes, the world may still tempt you to try. It may whisper lies of lack, echoing old fears with familiar urgency, but you will recognize the lie by the tension it brings, and in that recognition, you return again to the state, to the end, to the garden within, and you remain. This is your only task, to remain, not to fix, not to force, but to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, to abide in the finished work, and from that holy dwelling, all things shall be added, not by sweat, not by striving, but by law. You are the operant power, not because of effort, but because of awareness, not because you've done more, but because you've surrendered the need to do. You have ceased from your labors, and now, you enter rest. And from this rest, miracles no longer surprise you, they reflect you. Peace no longer feels fragile, it is your foundation. And life no longer feels like a test, it becomes a mirror, a canvas, a song, not one that you perform for approval, but one you were always meant to remember. So now in this final breath of revelation, feel it settle deeper than words. Let it fall past thought, past logic, past every habit of striving. Let it rest in the soil of your being. There is nothing left to chase. There is only everything to allow. And as you drift in this knowing, may the voice within remind you gently, again and again, you are already it. You have already become. You no longer need to try. You need only to be. And being is enough.